50 people for every seat. I don't know what. That's Larry. Everything Larry touches turns to gold. He made this very successful. But you're in this room, and some of you are the greatest leaders anywhere in the world. You're the greatest brains anywhere in the world. And the future is unlimited, and to a large part because of you, and we have to protect you, and we have to cherish you. I always say we have to cherish our brilliant people because there aren't many of them. So together with confidence, boldness, and persistence, let us lift up our people, grow our economies, defend our shared destiny, and build a future for our citizens that is more ambitious, more exciting, more inspiring, and greater than the world has ever seen. We're in a position to do things that nobody else has ever even thought of before. And many of the people in this room are the ones that are doing it. And I want to congratulate you, and I'm with you all the way. You can do things that nobody else can even think about. So I congratulate you on your tremendous success. And the United States is back, bigger, stronger, better than ever before. And I'll see you around. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
The President of the United States wrapping up an address in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum, an address that went for more than an hour. Plenty to unpack here, but I think the main...
Good afternoon. That was bracing. We are going to be setting up for our afternoon tea. We'll have Ken Griffin here a little bit later, Yuval, Harari, and Max Tegmark to tell us if the human race is going to survive the AI transformation. So we'll start at about 4:05 p.m. Thanks.
Please take your seats. The program will begin in 10 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please silence all phones. Our program will now begin. Please welcome to the stage Mark Miller, Global Editor of Bloomberg Live.
Good afternoon. I have the unenviable task of following that speech. So I'm glad many of you could enjoy it here in the room with us, and thank you for staying for our afternoon tea program here at Bloomberg House. We're really thrilled that you're here. The most common question we get is, what's the Wi-Fi information? So that should come up here on the screen behind me. Yep. And quick reminder that all the sessions this afternoon are being live streamed, so please be aware of camera positions throughout the room as you see them. And of course, silence your mobile phone. We're active naturally on social media, so I hope you'll engage with us there. You can find the various channels that we're on, and we are using the hashtag Bloomberg House. If you're not already a subscriber to Bloomberg.com, and I'm sure all of you are, you're missing out on some of the world's best and most informative content. And if you don't believe me, we're offering you a 3-month trial subscription, which you can access through this QR code, and I encourage you to take that opportunity. I'd also like to thank our sponsor for supporting the afternoon tea here at SAS. And in a moment, you'll be hearing from SAS alongside Amazon Web Services for a discussion about trust and accountability in the next era of AI. That session's been programmed by my colleagues in Bloomberg Media, and then we'll follow with additional conversations about the state of the world. So thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage Brian Harris, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of SAS, and Ruba Borno, Vice President of Global Specialists and Partners for Amazon Web Services, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Mandeep Singh.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone at the Bloomberg House, and it's going to be a very exciting conversation. So, Brian, I'm going to kick off with you. You guys have been a leader in predictive analytics, and we know we've just witnessed a technology wave in Gen AI, which is proving to be one of the fastest in the history of technology cycles. So what is it that you are doing with your clients when it comes to adoption, and how you are going about, pivoting to generative AI?
Well, let's talk about why we're all racing towards this destination. It feels like we're all, pervasively moving towards it. And I think first you got to ask, let's just set up the challenge, right? We've got this information overload scenario that's constant, which is organizations are generating exponentially more data every day with no end in sight. And the capacity to consume and make sense of this information is limited really by the number of people you can have in a company to process it. And so there's this information gap. And of course, what we've been doing for decades, right, in this world is we add technology to organizations to help them close this information gap and really find opportunity in that information gap, right? Some of it's confusion fatigue, but there's a huge opportunity. And I think this generative AI and agentic AI represents a very big step function in bending the curve and closing the information gap and the scale and capacity of human decision making. And I think that's what's most important right now to focus on. But it comes with, some inconsistent results. And I think that for right now, I think we've seen the trust conversation we're having a lot about this is that when generative AI, agentic AI works well, it's incredible. When it doesn't, it's pretty poor. And I think what we need to see is a more nuanced conversation of how to use the right AI for the right use case. And sometimes it's not a generative AI problem. It could be a standard predictive modeling problem, machine learning or deep learning problem without having to deal with the non-determinism of large language models.
And Ruba, you guys are the largest public cloud provider, and we are seeing one of the biggest build-outs of AI infrastructure. We're talking about 500 billion plus in hyperscale capex, this year. So what is it that your customers are sort of skeptical about, because that ROI question keeps coming up pretty much every quarter when companies report earnings. And so what is it that customers are finding it difficult when it comes to moving to generative AI?
I think with any new technology, there are going to be some impediments and learning along the way that could potentially result in unintended consequences that maybe slow down adoption. And so when we look at what are some of the things that have created unintended barriers for customers, the first is concerns about security. You've also heard concerns about hallucinations with AI. The next is concerns about the cost, and is it going to end up costing me more than I had expected? And maybe one of the other pieces is concerns about the people who are going to use them, and are they actually going to change? So if we tackle each of those things, I think that can help set a customer up for success. And maybe I'll just start off with on the hallucination side, because that's one that has dominated a lot of discussion with AI. I'll take one customer example. We worked with one of our partners with a healthcare provider, a healthcare system, and they have 700,000 members. Their customers call at their most vulnerable moments. You know, they need either medical advice or advice about their coverage that they have. A hallucination in a situation like that could cause real harm. But you can see the opportunity that AI could provide this health provider. They could give them an opportunity to support those customers faster, or 24/7 because the agents don't sleep, or they can also speak any language. So there's a lot of opportunity that it could also give them to improve their customer and patient care. And so addressing the hallucinations was really key there, because it could have completely stopped the adoption of AI. And that's where with Amazon, we use technology that we've actually deployed in other parts of our business, whether it's to determine security vulnerabilities and things like that. And it's a discipline called automated reasoning. And what it allows us to do is to be able to set a policy. And if you think in healthcare, there's regulations. You know what's in certain coverage. If it's health insurance coverage, you've got these policies codified. And then check that the AI agent provided you with a response that complies with that policy. So you check the output. That allows those hallucinations, at least in this particular example, to be reduced by 99%. Now, if you think of how they would have done it, let's say the typical way, they would have put a human in the loop to double check every output that the agent was giving, or in between steps. And then you wouldn't have gotten that real-time response to the customer. And so I think addressing hallucinations, which we're learning more and more how to do every single day, and automated reasoning is a key enabler of that, has been a key driver.
My understanding is there is a pilot phase for all these projects, whether you're deploying agentic AI or something else that you're building with APIs. So why are customers not catching that upfront? Why is it that you're realizing way late that hallucinations is a problem?
Well, I think in a pilot environment, it really depends on how the environment is set up. Is it set up using actual real data, the actual systems that you have in place? And does it mimic the production environment as closely as possible? And I think that, small projects and big projects generally require similar complexity. Is your data set up? Do you know what your policies are? And actually, that's why we've seen some of the industries that are regulated, think insurance, financial services, and healthcare and life sciences, actually are getting so much great benefit out of AI because they already have those policies codified. Other industries or companies, if they haven't done that yet, it takes them a little bit longer to be able to take the time to codify the policy. And so in the pilot phase, thinking through, does your development environment and your pilot environment mimic your production environment? Do you have the policies codified? Is your data ready? Also, is it a secure environment? Or do you then still have to spend 3 years migrating data to the cloud, moving your systems, making them extensible to the cloud, and also having security in place? And then the last piece, which is one that we probably find as the biggest inhibitor to adoption in a scale-out phase, is the change management for people. So how do you get individuals and employees who own certain processes? We've got entire organizations that have been structured based on complex processes, and people who manage those complex processes, to step back and reimagine that process to be end-to-end automated or handled by a collection of agents. And so that change management piece, we've seen a couple of success factors. One is really top-down driven mandates do work here. It's just this is a non-negotiable. You've got to do it. And then also allow the individuals who are responsible for the day-to-day work who will be most benefited from this automation to actually come up with it. So we've seen kind of a top-down and bottom-up enablement really being key. But that's one of the biggest drivers is the people.
And Brian, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got coding agents, which have really taken off. Dario was on stage yesterday, and he talked about how much the coding agents have improved in terms of functionality. So what is it that it's changing for you at the software engineering level or even at the customer level in terms of the success we have seen with coding agents?
Well, why coding agents work so well is you have labeled data, right? It either compiles or your unit tests, functional tests pass. And I think what we have to be careful of is we're making big leaps of how that coding agent works really well because we have those labeled data of it. Will the code compile? Does it functionally meet my specification? Do you have those same guardrails for the business when you're talking about a business process? So when you put agentic AI against a business process, you need to have the same caliber of labeled data and guardrails, if you will, to make sure that when it is doing things on behalf of people, it's doing it with an outcome that's intended for the business. So we're seeing massive, I get demos weekly using Claude, using M365 Copilot as well, where we're seeing 10 days, 2 months down to a week to days. Regression testing suites being created, and really just driving using a kind of a specification-driven design pattern in that. And we're evolving architectures inside of our software development process that allow us to really bring investments in other parts of the business. For example, we have a beautiful design system that we've built for our user experience. Our SaaS Vive for us is our end-to-end data and AI platform, and it's very comprehensive.
Was it using the coding agent?
What's that?
Was it using a coding agent?
Well, we do. We build it now with it, right?
Okay.
And but also it has generative AI hooks in it as well to do stuff on behalf of users. But what we're seeing with the design system is all of the design, the UX, componentry, the look and feel. We've been able to download that as context now and just give it as part of context to the Claude code agent that allows us then to basically build user experiences just like that that are completely compliant with the design specifications. And it's a really wonderful return on investment of a design system that then is married up into our agentic AI and the coding side for our development.
You're really taking advantage of the longer context lens. These companies are providing when it comes.
100%. It's basically that place that in the past, that design system was where users would go and get a reference implementation of a component. Could be a menu, could be a chart for our graphics and things like that we do for plots and all that stuff like that. But now it is now an asset used for context in our development. It's very exciting.
So Ruba, it sounds like the trust and accountability question really kind of depends on good labeled data. That's what Brian was alluding to. Is that another vector along with hallucinations where, and I know the two could be tied, but labeled data, how important is that when it comes for production level deployments? I mean, you guys run a lot of the mission critical systems for your customers on public cloud. So is that really the key to trust and accountability?
Well, data readiness is key to any kind of, I would say, modern technology adoption. And I think
thought
we
it
spend
changed with machine learning. Machine learning was more structured data. You got to label it, but it sounds like it's the same.
The overwhelming data that's out there is unstructured. Now it's getting access to it. It's got to be accessible.
Yeah.
And then I think the on be codified as well in an organization. And then you can be empowered to use it really well. But I think this isn't AI is not something where we want to boil the ocean. So rather than saying, okay, we've now got to look at our entire data estate and clean everything up, I mean, that is going to be an impossible task or a task that would take far longer without the ROI that's expected. What we found to be really successful is work backwards from specific use cases and address those use cases. And from there, you can determine which pieces of data really make the most difference to you. And actually, we've taken that one step further. A lot of customers are finding that they want to build their own frontier models, but it's very expensive to go out there and build a frontier model. I mean, we talk Anthropic, OpenAI, the amount of investment that's gone into those frontier models, Amazon's own frontier models of Nova. And so we launched something that we call Nova Forge, which is a model platform. And what we saw is that if you insert a customer-specific data in a certain use case in the pre-training process. So don't go all the way and you're done with a model and now you've got to do post-training for that specific use case. You train it in pre-training, and then you insert additional synthetic data, and then we help them complete the model. They can create a frontier model that's specific for their use case. So the analogy that we use is, let's say in the human world, you've got surgeons that they finish high school, they go to college, they then go to medical school, then they do a residency, and they become qualified surgeons. Well, what if you started training them when they're 7 years old, on how to do, holding a scalpel, and then eventually by the time they're 28 or 29, they're truly experts. Yes, they don't have a liberal arts education, but they're probably going to be exceptional surgeons. That's what we're seeing with frontier models and using a customer's data for specific purposes, reducing the cost and improving the accuracy of the response that they need. And so that's something we're really excited about to support customers and helps them get ROI faster.
And customers don't care if the model is open source or not, the one that...
Well, it becomes their proprietary model once they're inserting their own data. So that's actually what's exciting about it too, is it's their own proprietary model.
Do you guys have a preference in terms of using open source versus proprietary?
No, we view it as just another technology that's out there we put in play for our customers, and I think that's something we need to get. We need to start speaking more pragmatically about. I would argue that we're over-specified. We're browbeating customers with generative AI and agentic AI, and I think it's important. It is an important capability, but there's incredible value of other. Remember, agentic AI, generative AI are one element of AI, but they have taken the entire kind of storyline right now. And I'll give you examples for us. I mean, we have two centralized governments that have prevent over $10 billion worth of fraud running on machine learning models that we've developed. And those are not agentic workflows. Those are not generative AI workflows. But $10 billion is a pretty good ROI.
Of course.
So I think that it's important that we get really nuanced on when do we use it and when we don't, because it'll actually increase the trust of when generative AI, it'll increase the success rate for generative and agentic AI when we put it in the right position for a customer. For us, we have to deal, like our top 4 industries are financial services, life sciences, government, and insurance. These are all critically important decision-making that we have to help our customers through that can't be 95% accurate. They have to be 100% accurate every time. And so we are very...
probabilistic systems, they need all...
Right, so agentic and large language models introduce a non-deterministic element that has to be overcome. And for us, we have an incredibly important application called intelligent decisioning that allows us to build composite AI capabilities that use the best of machine learning, API integration, data source integration for context with large language models. So use the best and the strengths of large language models for their natural language interaction. That lowers the barrier for users to use that capability. But it also uses deterministic models that can be explained to regulators, all in one composite application. And it's so we actually run this on AWS for one of our a few of our customers actually. So and we have incredible outcomes with that capability. But this ability to build composite apps using the right choice of AI and governance is really, really important as we move forward with this AI conversation.
And the world of generative and agentic AI is very different in the sense the technical stack changes. You're no more talking about building databases for a solution, but everyone talks in terms of tokenization these days. So from your perspective, Ruba, how do you counsel your customers in terms of where they should be looking to apply, traditional AI versus where they should be thinking in terms of, you got to tokenize your information using reinforcement learning, for example, or something along those lines?
Yeah, maybe I'll just start by saying we're starting to pivot from thinking of AI as a product or service category to its underlying every single decision that's going to be made in every single use case and industry. So the question to the customer is, what decision do you need to make faster? What problem do you need to solve faster? And how can AI help you do that? Making decisions on drug discovery and which ones are more effective, or helping customers with customer care solutions. And so that really is the mental model that we take with our customer conversations, is what decision do you need help making faster? And then what are the processes and workflows that are in that getting you to that decision? And then how do we support you in automating those, and how can we break it down into agents? I'll give one example that I found really impactful. It's a public example, but we worked with a few partners. It was a partner ecosystem, which I think the future of technology and AI is partnerships. No one company can do it all. We work closely with SAS on so many customer engagements. But this was Toyota Motor North America. And they wanted to look at how do they best stock their inventory for customers. And so they looked at their entire end-to-end chain, from getting the materials from their suppliers all the way to delivering it to customers and to customer satisfaction. Built multiple agents on top of a platform we have called Amazon Bedrock Agent Core, which allows them to manage all of those agents. And what they saw, and this was in about less than a year to develop this, they were able to reduce their inventory by 60%. They improved predictability of what customers wanted by 85%. They reduced manual work by 40%. And on top of that, they increased customer satisfaction. And then the kind of pushback from the table moment, they were able to get $1 billion of business value out of that. So that kind of impact then leads them to think through, okay, we've built this end-to-end set of agents that are helping us with this workflow. What's the next workflow that we want to tackle? What other decision can we make faster? And so seeking those high impact examples and seeing them all the way through, I think, is a really great model to get adoption.
Great. And Brian, I want to kind of go to employees.
Okay.
Because when it comes to trust and accountability, I think employees are a big part of that. And so in your case, like, I mean, given the fast change that we are witnessing, do you think your employees trust, what the vision is when it comes to Gen AI, and how are you going about it?
Well, I'm very passionate about this topic because we come from a company with a CEO, Dr. Jim Goodnight, who's pioneered work culture. And so for us, I would argue that the first step in increasing trust with AI is increasing the trust between leaders and the workers in the organization with AI, which is that I'm going to invest in you and in your career to help you become a better employee, not just have you use AI so I can eventually displace you. That's the first level of trust that must be addressed, or you will not have AI adoption that you need in the organization. The second is, I think that what's really important right now is the employee, with AI, right, in the past, we've got this 80-20 rule for analysis has been kind of consistent, which is, data scientists and others will tell you, 80% of the time is they're gathering data, getting it into clean formats where they're actually used for model training and things like that. And 20% is left over with the kind of insightful analysis you want to make on it. And I think with generative AI and agentic AI, there is a real possibility we can flip that ratio to 20-80. What does that mean, though, for employees? That means that you're spending less time doing the data gathering and the data improvement, and you are actually focused on critical thinking and understanding, does the outcome that I'm getting through this analysis, is it executing in the right metric that I want for the business? Does it have secondary questions like, are there unintended consequences that I need to be considering? Are there other issues I need to be worried about with regards to affecting my customers themselves? Like, I want to make sure there's fair, transparent explainability and decision making. Again, if you're in fraud or in underwriting a loan, we want to make sure those are fair decisions based on consistent behaviors that we see. So I think what we see is the employees need to have the psychological safety to challenge AI results and feel empowered to challenge them, have dialogue around, okay, if this stuff is not correct, I want to be okay to state that, hey, I don't believe this answer is correct, we need to discuss this. And I think right now there's a propensity to want to just move the answer along in the business because that's the productivity return of AI. It's the inherent.
Are the tasks that your data scientists are doing now, have they changed as a result of all the Gen AI tools?
Yeah, I would tell you, if anyone in the room here, one of the most important things you could start doing is building the muscle for verification, validation frameworks. Because at the end of the day, when you are building context for AI to write code, for instance, or to train a model, you end up staring at data more, and that means what do you want to do? You want to encode the things that are important to your business around the guardrails and say, this is an answer that makes sense, it's in the general direction. Having verification frameworks, validation frameworks is so important because that's where you can kind of control the outcome and make sure that it complies with what your goals are for your organization.
So we only have a couple of minutes left. Ruba, Bloomberg Intelligence did this survey in December where we gauged the spending intentions of CEOs, and 80% plus CEOs want to invest in AI. They have allocated a budget, but still it feels like they're finding it hard to get stuff off the ground, especially in certain verticals. So what advice do you have for 2026, given we are still in January? What is it that they should be doing in terms of materializing their intentions into production deployments?
There are a couple of foundational elements that no matter what problem they're trying to solve, they should just think through. One is the change management side we talked about earlier, and I think Brian did a really nice job of how do you bring your employees along. But from a leadership perspective, it's explained the why very, very clearly. If it's not just AI for AI's sake, I think that those days are over. But it is, there are so many examples of where employees get benefits, where the company is delivering better value to their customers out of it, and looking around their peer group and wanting to be leaders there. Some view that as creating a crisis, but I think it's more important to create a level of ambition. So that's one. The second piece is thinking through the data preparedness that we talked through, and specifically tied to the decisions that most matter to the business. And then I would say the fourth is working with a competent ecosystem of partners and making sure that you've got the right level of support to help your team go along with it. So I think any leader, you're going to need advice of working with multiple partners to determine the best use cases for you, bring your people along, do the change management, support you with security, support you with the data side of things. I think that this is one where it's definitely a team sport.
Anything you want the frontier model companies to do?
Well, I think I love the continued investment in terms of what they're doing. For us, we believe that no one model will rule them all. Amazon from the get-go has had a customer choice policy, and we developed this tool called Amazon Bedrock that allows customers to choose a fit-for-purpose model. The LLM providers are providing amazing capabilities for people to take advantage of. Customers are going to want to build their own models as well. I think there's room for all of that. And so we're really excited about actually seeing more and more innovation.
Brian, I'll give you the final word.
I would ask that there's a lot of leaders here, incredibly impactful people, and I'd say ask yourself, what kind of future are we trying to build here, right? So invest in people. That is a tried and true strategy. The current mode of AI, generative AI, is literally one iteration of the next, we're 50 years, we're turning 50 this year, so we've seen a lot of tech. It's one iteration in the next 50. So you're going to need to invest in your people to transition them through this curve, because everyone's doing this. So if everyone's doing this, then it's about you creating new value in your organization. So you can lift your people up and then create new value, because you want to go create new market share. Right? Create new value in the organization to separate yourself out there and to know that you're in a competitive space. Invest in people. That's most important.
That's a great note to end on. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Brian and Ruba.
All right, I'm going to go this way.
Please welcome to the stage Ken Griffin, founder, CEO, and co-chief investment officer of Citadel, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Eric Schatzker.
Ken?
Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Good afternoon, everyone. And many have said it many times already, but allow me to say it as well. Welcome to Bloomberg House here in Davos. What shall we talk about? I think it's kind of obvious. You watched President Trump speak, Ken. Is there a single word you might use to characterize his remarks?
I'm not good at these sort of like guess-a-word games.
Well, that's precisely why
Let me tell you what will be maybe out of sync with many other people's views.
Oh.
All right?
Okay.
He gave a speech where he unquestionably made it clear that the United States wants to see Europe economically prosper. And I think that was a really important message to be delivered, and I hope the Europeans heard it. because over the course of the last 12 months, there's been a tremendous amount of friction between our two continents, and we are long-standing allies. But at the end of the day, the United States wants to see Europe prosper. And for the free world to prosper, Europe must grow faster.
Is the way to get Europe to prosper, to get Europe to grow faster, to get Europe to be more competitive, is the right way to do that to troll European leaders, to taunt Emmanuel Macron on stage? Is that the right way to inspire the desired response?
I think Trump likes to troll people of all backgrounds. It's not limited to just leaders.
And will people of all backgrounds respond in the way that we or he might like them to as a result?
No, of course not. But it's just part of his shtick.
It's just who he is.
It's who he is. You know, I have on my wall a copy of a tweet that he put out about me, and I've been trolled. It's okay. Like, life goes on. Badge of honor.
Besides the point he made about wanting Europe to be more competitive, which you clearly agree with, did you find yourself agreeing with the balance of everything else he said?
So let me be very clear. I think the president has an extraordinary instinct for the problems that both the United States and the free world faces. I often don't agree with his solutions, but I admire his ability and his willingness to forcefully talk about the problems that we face both in the United States and in the free world.
His diagnostic acumen
is really top notch.
Well, so,
I mean, like, take a step back, okay? Mm-hmm. The United States supported WTO, free trade, NATO, and a whole variety of other global institutions from World War II onward to accelerate the economic growth of Europe post the war, because we believed that the strongest way to defend the free world, again, was for Europe to be prosperous. Now, over the course of that journey, we didn't update the terms of that deal. And the American worker, in many respects, got the short end of the stick around the world. He just did.
True. Not. Right. I mean, I think we can all agree that it wasn't just because of a lack of competitiveness, investment, burden sharing on the part of the Europeans. There were many American companies that went to China and gladly gave away their IP. That cost American jobs too.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so this, again, is where the president's done a good job and said, do you know what? We need fair trade for the United States. We need a world hierarchy in which the American worker and American businesses have a fair and level playing field around the world. And often that wasn't the case when he was president, and he's really trying to address it. I wouldn't use tariffs as my mechanism of action to do so, but I have to give him credit. He is fighting for the American worker and the American people.
Okay, so his motives, in your opinion, are
constructive.
The right ones, constructive. Let's take it up to 10,000 feet. One of the reasons that this room is so full, Ken, is because you have a quality that distinguishes you, somewhat obviously, from many other business leaders, and that is your willingness to speak out, to champion what you believe is right, and to challenge what you believe is wrong. And we saw you do that with the Biden administration. You were a vocal critic. You took issues publicly with his policies and the posture of his administration. But you're fair about it. As you put it once upon a time, country before party. You've done it to President Trump as well. In April, some of you may recall, not long after Liberation Day, you criticized President Trump for moving too fast, alienating allies, making Americans poorer, and tarnishing the sterling reputation of U.S. assets. So here we are, right? For those who aren't counting, this is the second day of the second year of Trump's second presidency. What do you think now? This is the 10,000-foot view. Is he doing what's right for America? Not just diagnosing the problem. Policies and execution are just as important.
So let's be clear. He was elected into office because of two really material problems. Number one is our southern border was utter chaos. Millions of people streamed into our country. from all kinds of backgrounds, some of which, frankly, backgrounds we wouldn't want, but they streamed into the United States illegally. That's what it is. It was illegal mass immigration. And the president secured the border. I mean, he brought that to an absolute halt. And I really hope that he makes it clear that the United States still embraces legal immigration. I think we need to reiterate that point quite a bit, because one of the great superpowers of America is that we've attracted so many brilliant people from around the world, but the chaos at the southern border, he ended. Big policy triumph. The second issue that he was elected around was that of inflation. The Biden administration, we had rampant inflation in the United States, a combination of fiscal stimulus that was just beyond the appropriate levels, and monetary policy that was slow to react to the fiscal stimulus that was occurring. We had a level of untenable inflation in the United States of America. And if you were a retiree and your savings were in fixed income assets, you were seeing your future dim every single day. And you had enough. And the president is really trying to grapple with the issue of inflation. You know, it's quite ironic to see the Democrats have changed the language to affordability to try to attack President Trump for the rise in prices that largely occurred under the Biden administration. But the president right now, I think, really does have the message that he has to address the high cost of living in the United States. How do we make sure that for the American retiree or the American worker, that every dollar they have goes further and their quality of life improves?
I might come back to immigration, but specifically on the point of inflation, you have said that, in fact, to a colleague of mine not long ago, Danny Berger, that Republicans are finding it hard to accept the reality that many of the policies that they've championed, including driving illegal immigrants out of the country, are, by their very nature, inflationary.
And that's exactly right. So here's where he has a much more difficult dance. Shutting down the flow of illegal immigrants and pushing people out of our country constricts our labor markets. It's classic economics. If you reduce supply, all else being equal, prices rise. And we've had real wage growth in a number of sectors of the economy where the illegal immigrants play a very critical role in performing difficult jobs that need to get done.
And tariffs are also playing a role.
Tariffs, you know, if we look at the most recent data, the vast majority of the tariffs, the tax of tariffs, is being borne by either the American worker or the American citizen at the cash register, or by corporate America reducing their profit margins. And the president did reduce tariffs on a number of goods that are in the day-to-day shopping basket of the American people. So he understands he has to address some of the negative implications of tariffs to help address the issue of affordability.
Yes, he understands. He understands that affordability is a real issue and that it's political kryptonite in the midterms, but immigration and tariffs are big levers, hard, to counteract. Not to get too weedy here, but is he taking, in your mind, the right approach with recent initiatives such as banning institutional investors from buying single-family homes, intervening in the mortgage bond market, seeking an interest rate cap for credit cards at 10%, allowing home buyers to dip into their retirement savings? I can see why some of those measures might be welcome to American people. Is that really going to change the affordability outlook?
So I think this is where I might disagree with the president. The great power of the American economy is our embracing of capitalism. And when we unleash our entrepreneurs, when we unleash competition, we are able to materially improve our quality of living. And the real issue in the housing market is the lack of supply. And why do we have a lack of supply? Permitting in much of the country takes months or years to get a permit to build a house. I mean, how absurd. And then the building code has become so unwieldy and so overreaching that the cost to build a house puts it out of the reach of the average family trying to buy their first home, the home in which they'll have their dreams made. So the real issue is we need to address the regulatory burdens on the housing market. And if I were the president, I would have used Fannie and Freddie to do that. I would have said, if you are in a county that does not have prompt permitting and that does not have a reasonable building code, we will either drop the mortgage caps or we simply won't write mortgages in that county after date certain, to get our politicians at the local level to move their feet and to address the chronic problem that we have in America. We have too few of houses.
I do think it's really important for people
to know
that you're willing to say that. Yes,
the difference here?
I do.
Let the American entrepreneur get to work, and with competition and with the burden of government off their backs, they can solve the problems that we face in day-to-day life. You know,
this Ken, I mean, at least I have to give you credit for being consistent. This has been your rallying cry for the better part of 15 years, if not longer, economic freedom.
Well, I mean, maybe it's because I view what we do at Citadel as part of that story of unleashing entrepreneurs. You know, if you look at the U.S. equity market, for example, it's one of the most efficient markets in the world. And it's been driven by incredibly competitive dynamics between us and a handful of firms that have radically dropped the cost of trading for all over the course of the last 2 decades.
So since we're talking about the American economy, for the moment, we will change our focus shortly. Let me ask you, because you said on those particular issues, you take issue with some of the things he's doing. It would be great if we had more housing supply.
Or credit cards. How do we increase competition?
Right.
Like, what is it that gives a Wells Fargo or a JP Morgan or a Capital One such incredible commercial advantages that it forecloses in a material way new entry? And are there steps that we can take that are equitable that will increase competition amongst credit card issuers, that will bring down rates for all consumers on using their credit card? The worst thing we can do, if you regulate the maximum interest rate that you can charge, you actually reduce the stock of credit in society, particularly to younger people who have poor credit scores or to people who've had difficult times in life. And the younger people with poor credit scores in particular, those are people that literally start their business with their Visa card.
I want to go back
to take those entrepreneurs out of the economy, you really meaningfully reduce new firm creation, new job growth, and the innovation that makes America so special.
I would like to go back to the question I asked about whether the president is doing what's right for America. And you initially responded to me by saying he did what he said he was going to do. He tackled illegal immigration, and he's doing something about tackling inflation. That's still a work in progress, obviously. There are a number of other policies and positions that have a bearing on U.S. economic growth and U.S. economic competitiveness, particularly in the global arena. And I'd just like to understand, get a sense from you, channeling, I think, the interest here in the audience about whether you agree or disagree with where he is on the following. And you can do whatever you like, thumbs up, thumbs down. You can say agree, disagree. You can give me a little bit more, nuance. But redefining the focus of U.S. national security to the Western Hemisphere and seemingly opening the door for Presidents Xi and President Putin to operate with similar impunity in their own backyards. Good, bad.
So that's, I hope that's not the end game of our policy. Securing the national defense of the United States is of the utmost importance.
Always has been.
Always has been. And he's very focused on strengthening our military. And one of the things I really love is how he compliments the military every chance he gets. You know, you look at what happened in Venezuela. He is effusive in his praise of a mission that was flawlessly executed. It's really good to see him bringing pride back to our country for the men and women who serve our nation. So there's, again, it's like one of these mixed bags. I love the fact that he stands for a strong military, a strong national defense, and frankly, in America that no longer hides in its own shadow. I think he might be right. There's a good chance if he had been president, we would not have a war in the Ukraine.
Well, hard to know and prove.
Hard to know and prove, but hard to argue the counterfactual.
But at the same time, he's cutting aid and support for Ukraine. Do you approve or disapprove of that?
So with the Ukraine, he's really trying to figure out, like, how do I bring Russia and Ukraine to the table? And you could see his frustration.
Clearly.
That Putin is an immovable object on this front. In some sense, they're both very strong men. They feel very convicted in their opinions. They don't like to bend. And this has been, I think, for the president, one of the harder battles he's had to fight, is how do you create room for peace in the Ukraine?
You're a strong believer, Ken, that immigration, legal immigration, is the engine of innovation in America. Look at all the foreign-born Americans who are running some of the world's greatest companies, including Peng, for example, at Citadel Securities.
A huge portion of Citadel's leadership team was born outside the United States.
So curtailing legal immigration, restrictions on H-1Bs, halting processing of visa applications from 75 countries, is that the right way to promote the right kind of immigration?
So I know as a factual matter, within the White House, there's a real debate. How do we make sure that we continue to bring to our country the incredible number of people who have come to America, who have built and run our great businesses? You pointed out, half the Silicon Valley is run by immigrants or children of immigrants. At Citadel, my partner who runs Citadel Securities was born and raised in mainland China. In the hedge fund, my partner, co-CIO, was born in Ecuador. Head of my commodities business was born in Australia. I place a huge value on being able to bring the best and brightest from around the world to work at our team at Citadel. The president is really grappling with, how do we make sure that that door stays open in the United States of America?
Well, why shut it in the process?
Because there was this whole moment that it was immigration that we were ending. And there was not the distinct focus on the chaotic part and the highly value-added part to our economy.
So the longer this persists, the worse it is for America?
No, I think the longer this persists, the more they'll get that gradient better thought through.
And one last thing before we shift our focus.
So you mentioned that I'm willing to speak my mind about the president's policies. And let me say why. Because he listens. And I think that American business executives are making a real mistake in not speaking their mind. Because this president, he'll have his moments where he'll troll, or he'll have those moments, but he does listen.
Well, there are consequences to speaking out. It would seem, I can kind of understand. I would love to see more business leaders speak out. It would be, frankly, good for the news industry. But Jamie Dimon says something on the JP Morgan conference call about the president's demand that banks cap credit card interest rates at 10%. And the next day or the day after, all of a sudden, we're reading about the Justice Department investigating debanking by JP Morgan. Are they not related?
Actually, I think that investigation was probably open long prior to that conference call.
Well, maybe the public's knowledge of said investigation was conveniently timed.
Perhaps.
So what is it going to take then for more business leaders to speak out? Why aren't they speaking out? What are they afraid of?
So first of all, behind closed doors, they're much more willing to engage.
Sure, I have those conversations too.
And so the question is they might ask themselves, to what end? They might just ask that question. From my vantage point, I hope that when I talk about American policies, that people that I work with in the House and Senate have a chance to understand my point of view. Been involved deeply in the American political process for 20 years, and I have a number of friends in the House and in the Senate, and I want them to have a chance to be informed about my thoughts on our policies. So I think American executives really should not be afraid to use their voice with this administration. The first administration in a long time, Trump 1, Trump 2, that has clearly put the interests of the American business community first. I mean, I can't tell you, you didn't touch on this, but the regulatory deluge under Biden.
Well, I didn't touch on it because we have covered it extensively in past conversations.
Was suffocating. Suffocating.
Oh, I know, and I know you're...
And it is such a relief in the United States these days to be able to go back to business.
Let's shift our focus to Europe for a moment. It's important for me to ask this question, Ken, because you have been clear in the past that you believe in the value of alliances and in having allies. So we'd like to know what you make of the president's insistence that America buy Greenland, and the corollary, right? The implicit threat to NATO if Denmark denies him. He said it today. All we want is a piece of ice. You can say yes, and we'll be grateful. You can say no, and we'll remember. Does that justify an invasion of Greenland, which he has talked about?
He was very clear today. We will not use force to take Greenland.
So
we're still clear.
Where does this end then? Retaliatory tariffs? He jacks up tariffs on these 8 countries to 25%. The Europeans invoke the anti-coercion measures, and it's a global trade war?
I don't think we're heading towards a trade war with Greenland. But I do think the president today made an interesting case, almost compelling, as to what the U.S.'s interest is in Greenland.
Well, national security, international security. He sort of dismissed the whole critical minerals issue, the Golden Dome.
Right, that Golden Dome is what,
Sure, but
Israel's version of that allows Israel to exist as a country. If our enemies do not think they can take us on a first strike, they will not try to take us at all.
do you really think that the Europeans, the Danes, the Greenlanders don't want the United States to put the kinds of defense systems in place in Greenland that would protect them equally as it protects us in North America?
So you and I sit here and scratch our heads and wonder why this is such an issue. And I think that's like a really interesting question. Like, why do we, why does the president
They would probably be willing to commit to it in writing.
Well, actually, the U.S. already has pretty substantial rights to access Greenland for defense. And as the president said, the United States has shed a lot of blood and spent a lot of money over the decades to ensure peace here in Europe and in North America.
How do you think this ends?
I think there's a significant probability that this moves from page A1 to page C17 over the course of the next 6 to 9 months.
An off-ramp. There's an off-ramp coming?
The question is, does this stay front and center in his mind versus all the other issues he grapples with?
That is the key question. I'm afraid I can't answer it. A couple of quick things before we run out of time. 2 days ago, Ken, we witnessed a disorderly, seemingly uncontrollable sell-off in the Japanese bond market. And there are many people here who may not be paying close attention to the Japanese bond market. Pay attention, right? It has been described as eerily similar to the UK's 2022 gilt crisis. Is there an implicit warning, Ken, in that sell-off for the U.S. Treasury bond market?
Actually, I think there's an explicit warning that if your fiscal house is not in order, the bond vigilantes can come out and extract their price. And what's particularly troubling is that if you look at what happened in Japan, when bonds and stocks move together in prices, then bonds are no longer a hedge for your equity portfolio. And they lose a substantial part of what makes them so special in constructing a portfolio. If U.S. Treasuries are viewed as being at risk because the United States is not seen as being creditworthy, then bonds and stocks will move together in price, and that will result in bonds having a much higher demanded yield in the marketplace. So mortgage interest rates will be higher. The cost for us to finance our deficits will be higher. I think that what happened in Japan is a very important message to the House and to the Senate. You need to get our fiscal house in order.
Liz Truss was playing with fire. The Japanese just learned they're playing with fire. Is the United States, is President Trump playing with fire?
Probably not yet. The U.S. has so much wealth, we can maintain this level of deficit spending for some period of time. But the longer we wait to change direction, the more draconian the consequences will be of that change.
Last question for you, Ken. You've described the risk management process at Citadel as, and this is an oversimplification, looking at historical scenarios and running stress tests to understand how they or similar events would affect your firm's positions and its portfolios. I'd like to know, are you running more or perhaps different kinds of stress tests now in light of, say, the possibility of a failed auction in the Treasury market, or recent geopolitical developments, or perhaps these incipient signs of social instability and civil unrest in parts of America?
I mean, what was the last one?
Well, look what's going on in Minnesota. I said incipient signs.
Yeah, it doesn't help. It doesn't help to turn every small issue into a bigger issue than it is.
I was
right?
trying to be nuanced. Maybe
Yes,
I chose the wrong modifier.
I'm going to be nuanced back. It paints a picture of a country that's tearing itself apart.
That's not happening.
I mean, I live in the free state of Florida. The streets are safe. The schools are great. People are happy. There is none of the turmoil that you see in Minnesota and Florida. Zero. And by the way, we have a bipartisan government in Florida. The mayor of Miami is a Democrat. The mayor of the county is a Democrat. The governor of the state's a Republican. So back to the issue of risk management at Citadel.
And stress tests.
I mean, of course, I have to give real consideration to the geopolitical dynamics that are playing out in terms of how we construct our portfolio. And it has real implications on our willingness to invest in countries around the world. As an American headquartered firm, we would, for example, think about our investment exposure to China different than if, for example, we were based in the UAE or Saudi Arabia.
Of course.
That's a consequence of where we are today geopolitically that we need to keep in mind in how we run our affairs and manage our business. And then, of course, we need to think about today, what are the implications of a bond market that can have a move of the violent nature that we saw in the UK in 2022?
And Japan 2 days ago.
And neither of those incidents is receiving the coverage they deserve in the mainstream media in the United States of America. The American voters need to understand we may not be playing with fire, but we have turned the fireplace on.
That is a vivid metaphor on which to end our conversation. Ken, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Griffin from Citadel.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Please.
Please welcome to the stage Yuval Noah Harari, historian, philosopher and best-selling author, and Max Tegmark, co-founder of the Future of Life Institute and professor at MIT, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix.
2 stars on stage. Oh my gosh. So as Ken is getting mobbed, we can sit down. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm actually so excited about this fireside chat because a lot of people have been thinking about superintelligence and AI, and I could not be more happy to speak to Yuval Noah Harari and Max Tegmark. To both of you, we're going to have a good conversation over the next 30 minutes to try and understand superintelligence. Now, superintelligence means different things to different people. Even the big ones that are trying to build it have different timelines and different definitions. So what does superintelligence, Yuval, mean to you?
That it can make $1 million on its own. That it's an agent that you release to the financial system, for instance, and it can do everything, including open and manage its own bank account, and it can make $1 million. Then it's superintelligence, and then you can have millions of those taking over the financial system.
I mean, I wish we'd hear Ken react to that because he's made a couple of millions and maybe he's worried about it. Max, what does it mean to you?
So let's build up to it like a layer cake. First, what's artificial intelligence? It's just non-biological intelligence. What's intelligence? Well, for those of us who are researching and building artificial intelligence, we simply define intelligence as the ability to accomplish goals. The more difficult the goals, the more intelligent, the more diverse the goals are, the more broad the intelligence is. And superintelligence was originally defined in the book called Superintelligence as an artificial intelligence which is just vastly better than humans at any cognitive processes. So practically it would mean can do every job much better than us by definition, and in fact, it would pretty quickly figure out how to improve itself and be able to be smarter than all of humanity combined.
So Elon Musk thinks, we could have AGI this year. If you speak to Demis Hassabis, he thinks it's like 5-10 years away. Who's right?
I don't know. I mean, but it's a very, very short time, however you look at it. And if it is coming, then humanity is completely unprepared for it. I hope it takes longer, because it means we have longer to prepare. But this is a very, very short time frame anyway.
I mean, just to put it into context, I mean, is this bigger and different than the Industrial Revolution?
It's bigger than anything. I mean, because it's not a tool, it's an agent. I mean, every previous invention in human history was a tool. Whether it's the printing press, whether it's atom bomb, whether it's an airplane, it's a tool in our hand, we decide what to do with it. Here we are creating an agent that can make decisions by itself. It doesn't wait for us to decide. It can invent ideas by itself. It's introducing a different species, non-organic species to planet Earth, which is presumably, by the claims of these people, more intelligent than us. You look at the history of humanity and the history of biology, it usually doesn't end well for the less intelligent species when the more intelligent species comes along.
I mean, we're getting a laugh, but I would be worried. Should we not worry?
You should be worried.
Dark humor is a good way to cope. Yeah, and the actual definition we talked about, of course, means that it's a new species. If you have robots that are both vastly smarter than us and also every bit as agile as us, they can do everything we can do. They can make robot factories and make new robots. They can reproduce, in other words. They check all the boxes on the species definition. And this is very accepted stuff in Silicon Valley. You can go read Sam Altman's blog called The Merge, which he wrote 11 years ago, where he says Homo sapiens is going to be the first species to build its successor species. And we can debate about whether we want to do that or not, but that's what it means. And then for your question, when will it happen? This is where there is a really genuine controversy among experts. I think it's easier to see to not lose sight of the forest for all the trees by just zooming out a little bit. So Alan Turing, the godfather of AI, he said in 1951 already that if you build basically a new species that's smarter than us, by default, it's going to take control. Just walk down to the nearest zoo and ask yourself, is it the humans in the cages or some dumber species? And it's the default outcome, as Yuval said, that the smarter species controls, because intelligence gives power. Now, Alan Turing also said in 1951, don't worry, it's far away, but I'm going to give you a test so you know when it's close. It's called the Turing test. It's about mastering language and knowledge at the level of a human. And since then, AI was mostly overhyped, decade after decade, over-promising, under-delivering, until about 4 years ago, when it switched, it became underhyped. Almost every professor and other AI researcher I know predicted 6 years ago that we were decades away from passing the Turing test, from getting something as good as ChatGPT 4, say. And they were all wrong, because it happened already. And since then, it's continued going faster than most of my technical colleagues thought. It went pretty quickly in the past 4 years from sort of high school level, university level, PhD level, to professor level and beyond in some areas. And just last year, for the first time, AI won the gold medal in the International Math Olympiad, which is sort of the intellectual version of being Usain Bolt in the Olympics. And there's no sign whatsoever of the progress slowing down. So I think we can say quite confidently that if you buy into the basic premise that the brain is a biological computer, of course we can build a better one. Some people think it'll happen next year, 2 years from now, some think 5 years, some think 10 years. But most serious technical people I know have stopped talking about decades from now.
Well, I think the amazing thing is, if you think about it, where were you on the day that AI passed the Turing test? For decades, people were talking the Turing test, the Turing test. Where were you on the day it happened? Nobody remembers, because it's just swished through it.
Yeah.
And people stopped talking about the Turing test. Nobody talks about the Turing test anymore. It just happened.
Yeah.
And the thing is that to change the world, to change history, you don't need super intelligence. Very dumb intelligence is still enough to change history.
We humans did.
Yeah. You look at, say, social media, which is controlled by very, very primitive AIs, and how social media changed society, politics, psychology over the last 10 years or so. So we don't really need, superintelligence is a chimera. They keep changing the posts. Even quite primitive AI is sufficient to change history and society. I don't know when we reach the point, but I'm sure that in the next decade or so, we will have to deal with a new wave of immigration. Immigration is one of the biggest political issues right now. AI immigration. That we will have hundreds of millions of AI immigrants coming from mainly two countries, China and the US. And it's strange, the US telling countries, close your borders to human immigrants, but open them wide to our AI immigrants. And I'm not against immigration. We will have, AI doctors in the healthcare system and AI teachers in the education system, but they will bring problems. And the big question is, how does society, human society, adapt to a giant wave of immigration from a different species?
Yuval, can you talk, first of all, of how you see it changing? So how is it changing our economy when we have superintelligence? How is it changing the fabric of society? Like, people understand, but it's actually very difficult to see. What does it mean?
What does it mean? I'll give just maybe two examples. Finance. Once AIs can act as financial agents and start investing money by themselves, making money by themselves, what happens if AIs come up with new financial investment strategies, which are like Move 37 of the famous AlphaGo game, completely new financial strategies, and next stage, new financial devices. The financial history of humanity is humans inventing new financial devices, money, checks, stocks, bonds, ETFs. If you remember the 2007-8 financial crisis, it started with the invention of new financial devices, the CDOs, that people thought for a few years were wonderful until they brought the market down. What happens if AI financial agents invent new financial devices which are mathematically so complex that no human understands the financial system anymore and therefore cannot regulate it anymore? But we don't want to regulate it because it makes trillions, and then there is a crash, and not a single human on the planet understands what is happening because the financial system has developed to a stage that only AIs understand what is happening there. A different example, what happens when you raise kids from day zero when they interact with AIs more than they interact with other humans? That if you ask the child or if you watch the child to see what are the main interactions of the child and how does the child's psychology develops and things like attachment and friendship, the main interaction is with AI. What are the implications for human psychology and society? We have no idea. We will know in 20 years. This is the biggest psychological and social experiment in history, and we are conducting it, and nobody has any idea what the consequences will be. Just to go back to the theme of immigration, a lot of the people who oppose immigration, if they hear that their son or daughter is dating an immigrant boyfriend, they get nervous. What will happen when their son or daughter starts dating an AI boyfriend?
More nervous. Max, and this is to the point, you believe that actually, the only way to make this a success is to try and align superintelligence with human goals. But,
no.
In Davos, you also see, what is the human goal?
Yeah, I don't actually believe that. Let me just clarify a little bit. So for this great question you just asked, what happens in the world when the jobs and so on, when we build superintelligence, it's important to remember we do not have superintelligence now. So it's a huge mistake to start thinking about how AI is having some small effects on the job market now when you can do reskilling. By definition, AI can do all the jobs much better and cheaper than our superintelligence can. So by definition, we are economically obsolete when superintelligence comes. OpenAI used to have on their website that their goal was to replace all valuable human work. So forget about jobs. We cannot get paid for anything after that. Maybe society can find a way of still giving some money to people if humans stay in control. But right now, the famous control problem, which people have worked on for decades, many of the smartest minds, how do you control a smarter species, is unsolved. Many believe it's impossible, just like it's impossible for chimpanzees, to control us. So most likely, if we build superintelligence, it's the end of the era where humans are in charge of Earth. Elon Musk was saying that on a stage just a month ago, it's going to be machines in charge, not us. But this is not inevitable. It's a huge mistake I think many people make. Ask what's going to happen, as if we humans now are just some sort of passive bystanders, eating popcorn, waiting for AI to take over the world. We're building this stuff. And many of the most influential people steering this development are here in Davos, right? And
so you can build it differently? And what
yes,
about this?
we totally can.
Interaction?
We totally can, yeah. So, for example, raise your hand here in the audience if you're excited about AI that cures cancer and helps us. It's a lot of hands. I'll take them down. Who is excited about AI that simply makes us economically obsolete and replaces us? See, okay, one guy, but nobody else wants it, right? So the vast majority of people do not want humans to remain in charge. So I think it's quite likely we will not actually race to build superintelligence because almost nobody wants it. Not just ordinary people. But do you think the Chinese government and the US government want to have something built that's just going to overthrow them? Of course not.
But so if you can control it, right, if you can align it with what you want, then you think that, that's a possibility.
Those are two totally different things, actually. So I'm so glad you asked. Control, it means, you have the power over it. You can shut it down if you want. Yeah. Alignment, as opposed to without control, means that we lose control over it. AI is the boss of Earth, but for some reason it decides to be nice to us. This is what most of the companies are pushing for right now. And I think if it was more widely understood by politicians that this actually implies the overthrow of the US government, they wouldn't be so cool with it.
Yeah. Yuval, I mean, is this, do you have to control the concentration of power of this
I think it's not a coincidence that we see the rise of AI and the return of imperialism at the same time. Okay. And I think certainly in the US, the new imperial vision of the world is based on the assumption that we are winning the AI race. AI will give us control of everything, the economy, military, culture. So we don't need allies. We don't need anybody. Mm-hmm. We can just take control of the world ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's all premised on the assumption that we are winning the AI race, and it will give us everything.
Yeah. Except this is a bit like a Greek tragedy in that what a lot of the politicians haven't understood yet, which is pretty obvious to many of the scientists, is that we have no way of controlling right now something that smart. So what will happen first is some company maybe gets more powerful than the US government and sort of starts more or less becoming the government, and then they lose control over the machines, and then it's a very sad ending for all the humans. There are actually two separate races going on here, which must not conflate. Right. One is a race to dominance, where superpowers are trying to get the dominance by building more powerful tools, economic tools, military tools that they can still control. Then there's a second race to see who can be the first to build superintelligence, which is going to overthrow them. Right? So if someone really wants control, what they should build is the tools and have very strict regulations to make sure nobody messes up and builds the new species that replaces us.
Can democracy survive this?
Hopefully, yes. I mean, democracy is ideally suited to survive this because we are going to make mistakes with AI, with the way we develop it, with the way we deploy it. And we need a self-correcting mechanism. We need a mechanism that says, okay, we made a mistake, let's go back and try something else. In history, the best mechanism we know of this type is democracy. The whole idea of democracy is you elect somebody, you try a set of policies, and after 4 years or 5 years, you say, hey, we made a mistake, let's try something else. In many ways, the AI becomes much more dangerous in a dictatorial setting. Because, you know, in a democracy, say for AI to take control or to manipulate the system, it's very difficult to manipulate a democratic system. In a dictatorship, in an autocratic regime, you just need to learn how to manipulate a single person, who is usually very paranoid and very narcissistic, which is why it's very easy to manipulate them, at least for a superintelligence.
Can I add some optimism here? Because you're looking a little bit concerned.
No, not at all. I mean,
No,
we're having a great time. Cocktails are coming.
I completely agree that we don't need to build superintelligence. We don't need to go down that road. And hopefully the politicians, you know, especially powerful politicians, the last thing they want is to build something that will take power away from them.
Exactly.
And hopefully when they realize that this is serious, they will not go down that path.
Yeah. But is it too late? And actually, I wasn't worried. I was thinking about, you know, is it too late? When is it too late to design something that is not omnipotent? If you give it all the power, then you become obsolete.
So I think it goes more the other way around. Once society gives the right incentives to those who build the tech, they'll figure out a way of doing these things so you can have your cancer cure and all the great tools, but not out of control Skynet. So the optimism comes from, is why I think neither the US nor China is going to ultimately let their own companies build the out-of-control superintelligence Skynet. For China, Yuval just explained why. Clearly, Xi Jinping and the CCP don't want to lose control, and they have all the means they need to have to be able to stop Chinese companies from building superintelligence that can be uncontrolled, right? In America, similarly, the NatSec establishment in America will start to see it as this is a NatSec threat, very bipartisan. But even before that, we're seeing an amazingly crazy bipartisan coalition emerging now in recent months in America. I call it the Bernie to Bannon coalition, the B to B coalition. You hear these two people saying exactly the same stuff about AI. They say things like, you know, it's so crazy. It's illegal for a creepy 60-year-old man to be manipulating and pretending to be a girlfriend of a young teenager and persuade them to commit suicide. It's illegal for a drug company to sell medicines that haven't been tested in a clinical trial to these kids. Why on earth should it be legal for an AI company to sell an AI girlfriend chatbot, which has now caused many teenage suicides? They're saying basically we need to treat AI companies the same way we treat pharma companies and restaurants and everyone else. First, you meet the safety standards and then you can sell. And I actually think we're going to start seeing these incentives where AI companies have to meet the safety standards. No one would have a clue how to make superintelligence pass any kind of safety standards, right? So that means companies will innovate to build the cancer cures and make fantastic productivity gains and all the stuff you want. And the other stuff will just not happen for the foreseeable future, and I think that's great.
I was going to ask who should be in charge of I don't know if it's an ethics committee or something to see. You need to do it before, right?
But this is a solved problem. We know how to do clinical trials, and you have the company is in charge of convincing a bunch of government-appointed experts that this medicine here is not going to cause massive birth defects like thalidomide once did. Even the restaurant is in charge of cleaning up the kitchen and making sure it's not full of rats and persuading the health inspector that this is okay. This is a solved problem. We don't need to reinvent the wheel of how to put safety standards on an industry, because we've done it on every American industry except AI at this point.
Yuval, how do you see the humans changing with AI anyway? I know there's a debate on whether humans want to be or the superior species because it's intelligence, or whether it's a sense of belonging also, and purpose that keeps society together.
No, AI will challenge our deepest identity. That I'm not talking about superintelligence.
Just AI.
I'm talking about, again, this wave of AI immigrants that we will encounter more and more everywhere. And they will challenge us in many of the things we thought define our humanity. That, you know, when a robot or a car runs faster than us, we are okay with it, because we never defined ourselves by our ability to run faster than everybody else. We always knew that cheetahs can run faster than us. So if cars and robots can do that, that's fine. But we defined ourselves by things like the ability to think. I think, therefore I am. by our ability to create. We are the most creative species on the planet. What happens to human identity when there is something on the planet which is maybe not this scary superintelligence, but is still able to think better than us, is still much more creative than us in many fields. We already saw it in narrow fields, like in chess or in Go, that AI thinks better, is more creative. This will happen in more and more fields. What happens when it comes to religion? That, you know, I have friends, I'm a meditator, I'm part of a meditating community. When they have an issue with their meditation, they no longer go to a meditation master, they go to an LLM, they go to an AI to get advice. And this is likely to happen in Christianity, in Islam, in Hinduism. What happens to religion when AIs replace? And you know, especially in religions which are based on texts, on scriptures, no Jewish rabbi is able to remember all the Jewish texts ever written. AI can easily do that. So if you have a question about Judaism and you go to the AI and not to the rabbi, what does it mean for human religion and for religious identity? What happens if AIs create a new religion? You know, it shouldn't sound so far-fetched because almost every religion in history claimed that it was created by a non-human intelligence. Until now, this was all fiction. But now it can be true. You can actually have a religion created by a non-human intelligence. What does it mean for human identity?
I mean, a lot of the big tech companies will say that we'll have more time from human to spend quality time, emotional time with people.
Maybe. That's one way of looking at it. But then again, if you grew up interacting and much of your psychological makeup is through interactions with AIs, how will it impact the way we interact with other humans? You know, with other humans, part of the issue is that sometimes they have feelings that annoy us. We are angry at them. They are angry at us. AI, assuming that it has no feelings of its own, at least, you know, it can feed our narcissism. It can be this thing that is always focused on you. Like you come back home from work and your husband or your wife don't really pay attention to you and they are grumpy because of something that happened in work to them. AI will never do that. It will always focus on you.
Nor will dogs.
Yeah. And getting used to having a relationship with something like that and then trying to build a relationship with a human being, that can become much more difficult than in any previous time in history.
So when you speak, both of you, when you speak to heads of states or chief executives of big companies that say, look, I'm worried about the picture that you're painting here, what do I do about it? How should I look at it? What do you tell them?
I tell them, if they're in government, start treating AI companies like you treat any other government companies in your country. Put safety standards on them, and then they'll innovate to meet them. And when I talk to people in the companies who are lobbying against all regulations, I ask them, you have all these voluntary commitments. You've promised that your company is going to hold you to these standards. Why don't you go lobby your politicians to make your own promises be binding law on all your competitors also? I encourage you to ask them here as well, those who are in Davos, why they aren't doing that yet. But it's important to remember it's not too late for us to steer towards a really inspiring future with technology. Why shouldn't we cure cancer? Why shouldn't we solve all these other challenges that human intelligence has been stumped by? We can do it, but that is not the path we're on right now. Right now we're on this race to replace. And I'm not just talking about ultimately trying to replace all jobs. We are starting to see, those of us who are parents, how there's a race to replace human relationships by having people instead put little rectangles between the humans, and even the attention economy is shifting in more towards even an attachment economy, where some children have been so attached and manipulated by AIs that they kill themselves. You know, that is the wrong direction. We need a course. We need to really change direction. And the solution again is, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if we know how to do this, we decided to regulate every other industry with safety standards. That's why we can trust our medicines now. We can trust our cars. We can trust our food in the restaurants to not give us salmonella. We just have to do this with AI as well. It's tough because there's a lot of lobbying money going against it, but there was massive lobbying against seat belts as well. You know, we can do this.
Yuval, what would you tell him?
Have an international agreement banning legal personhoods to AI. I think the most dangerous move at the present moment is AIs gaining legal personhood or functional personhood. AIs are not persons. They don't have bodies, they don't have minds, but in the legal and political system, we have legal personhood, for instance, to corporations. Corporations can own bank accounts, they can sue you in court, they can donate to politicians. They are considered legal persons. In India, certain gods are considered legal persons. Now, until today, this was legal fiction. Because in the end, when Google decides to buy a corporation, when Google decides to donate money to a presidential campaign, it's a human being making the decision. We say it's Google, but if you look, there is actually a human being there, an executive, a shareholder, a trustee who decided. Same with the Indian gods. It's not really Shiva who is suing you in court. It's the human trustees. AIs can actually manage a bank account. They can actually manage a corporation. If you allow legal personhoods to AIs, you can have corporations without humans that might become the most successful corporations in the world, lobbying politicians, suing you in court, and there is no human behind. It doesn't mean stopping any kind of research. You can continue all the research you want, but until we are sure about this thing, no legal personhood to AIs, which also means that, for instance, AIs cannot operate by themselves on social media. This is also legal personhood.
Yeah, I just want to say, this is so wise. I mean, granting robot rights and then making superintelligence would be the dumbest thing we've ever done in human history, and probably the last.
Okay. Yuval, I mean, you know, people here, there's a lot of political shocks, there's geoeconomics, people we're inundated by news, good news, bad news, and you're one of the greatest minds of our century, and it really actually caught my attention that you go on a silent retreat. So not many people think about their brains and how they think. They just do it. They have to show up every day in the office early. So how do you think about it, and how do you actually really take time to think and reset?
I think, you know, this is our most important tool. At least, you know, whether I'm a public intellectual or a politician or a manager of a company, my mind is my most important tool. And I need a healthy and balanced mind to deal with the world, especially the world of 2026. It's crazy to invest in everything else and not in my mind. And the thing about investing in the mind, nobody can do that for you. I can send my suit to the dry cleaner, so somebody cleans my suit for money. I cannot send my mind to be cleaned by somebody else. It is the one thing I need to do for myself. Also, you know, in the field of AI, we constantly talk about AI versus human intelligence, AI versus human mind. What do we know about the human mind? If you don't understand the human mind, you cannot understand AI. You know, I hear people say, oh, AI is just glorified autocomplete. It just predicts the next word in a sentence. That's nothing. And then I sit for meditation and observe what's happening inside my mind. And I'm a verbal person. I think in words. And I see words popping in my mind and forming sentences. And one of the practices of meditation is try to observe the next word that pops up in your mind. Where did it come from? Why this word and not another word? You know, just this sentence I'm now saying, I don't know how it will end when I begin to say it. Like, what did I say, how it will end, and not how it will conclude, how it will terminate, how it will develop? Where did the word end come from? When I started the sentence, I did not know that it will end with the word end. Something in my mind kind of predicted, okay, the next word will be end. And if I don't understand how this is happening in my mind, how can I have the kind of hubris to say what AI can and cannot do and what will be the future relationship between AIs and humans if you don't understand the human mind.
And that's why it feels like we have free will, because we can't predict what we're going to decide until we've actually finished the thought process and made the decision. Yeah.
Gentlemen, that was so interesting. Thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. Please give everyone a big round of applause. Yuval Harari.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So thank you all for joining us. Just a couple of final 20 seconds. If you give me 20 seconds, you've been an excellent, excellent audience. A big thank you to our speakers. You know you have incredibly busy schedules. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Special thanks to SAS for making today's afternoon tea possible. And we'll see you back here tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for an interview with Nigel Farage. Have a great evening, everyone.